Welcome into Bucco-booth, everybody. My name is Benson Fector, and I will be the host of your show today. A very happy 4th of July, Independence Day, to everybody celebrating out there. God bless America today and always. It is a joyous holiday, and usually we're watching baseball on this day. Kind of somber and sad that we aren't going to have any baseball to watch today. But nonetheless, the show here at Bucco-booth must go on, and it is a little bit of a joyous episode today as baseball is back. Yesterday, the Pirates held their first team group workouts. They have been working out at PNC Park since July the 1st on Wednesday, and things are really starting to kick into gear. We are 19 days from opening day. It is quickly approaching. We yet to have a schedule that should come out this week. But baseball is coming, and it is coming in a hurry, and we have a lot to talk about today. With the draft capped at 5 rounds in 2020, there is a large supply of undrafted free agents that can be signed for $20,000. The Pittsburgh Pirates have signed their second undrafted free agent. Last night, the Pittsburgh Pirates announced via Twitter that the team had agreed to terms with right-handed pitcher Nick Garcia. Garcia was the last player the team had to sign from their 2020 draft class. The third-round pick signed for $1.2 million per Jim Callis, about $420,000 over slot. Ben Cherington officially added one hitter and 5 new pitchers to the organization via the draft, spending all but $87,100 of their draft bonus pool. One area the Pittsburgh Pirates have not been overly aggressive in has been the undrafted free agent front. After the draft ended, the club signed only player in Parker Brahms, a right-handed pitcher from Sacramento State. The team, in search for catching depth, failed to add one in the Starling Marte trade, despite rumors that was the position the club was targeting in the draft and the start of the undrafted free agent period. Last night, the Pittsburgh Pirates were able to add an undrafted free agent catcher. According to Ben Glazer of Baseball America, the Pittsburgh Pirates are signing Chapman catcher Joe Jimenez. Chapman is the same school that third-round pick Nick Garcia attended, meaning that Jimenez must have caught the eyes of the Pirates scouting staff. Jimenez is a 5'10" and 185-pound right-handed hitting catcher, while being a 2019 College World Series All-Tournament selection at the Division III level. Last season, he hit for a .302 average, .402 on base, .371 slugging, with more walks, 24, than strikeouts, 17, while adding 12 stolen bases, but he was caught 6 times. In 2020, Jimenez started off with a bang, hitting .348, a .396 on base, and a .587 slugging in his first 12 games and 53 plate appearances. In the Northwoods League, a collegiate summer league where players use wooden bats and minor league baseballs, Jimenez hit for a .206 average, a .315 on base, and a .308 slugging in 128 plate appearances over 33 games. Jimenez's bat seems to be subpar, but perhaps he's a good defensive catcher that will help Garcia continue to develop, given the recent transition to full-time pitching for Garcia. The Pirates are putting a lot of faith in Garcia and his quick rising arm, so an additional $20,000 investment to help develop an overslot third-round pick seems to be the explanation on this signing, and a reasonable explanation at that. $20,000 is just about nothing when it comes to Major League Baseball teams. And the fact that they decided to go with Nick Garcia in the third round, who people on MLB Network, I know Dan O'Dowd compared him to John Smoltz. He's described as a first-round pick that the Pirates got in the third round, and that's why Nick Garcia signed for overslot at $1.2 million. It's $420,000 over slot. And obviously the reason why they were able to do that is by drafting a guy like Jack Hartman, who only signed for $60,000, or a guy like Logan Hoffman. Allowed them to draft Jared Jones and Nick Garcia and Carmen Mlodzinski. But this signing of Jimenez, and you might recognize the name Joe Jimenez, he's also no relation, but there's also Joe Jimenez, relief pitcher, closer, I believe, for the Detroit Tigers. And, Jimenez, he did start off really hot this season, batting .348, a .587 slugging. But obviously that is a small sample size. It is a Division III school, only 53 plate appearances in 12 games. And the reality is, when you look at his full season stats in 2019, he was still named a College World Series All-Tournament selection, again at the D3 level. But what you don't like to see is when you take a look at the slash line of a player. So for Jimenez in 2019, he had a .302 average, a .402 on base, but you want to see that slugging much higher than the on base, and his slugging was at .371. So it's clear that Jimenez can hit a little bit, but it definitely does not come with the slugging. And the other thing that I do like to see is stats from either the Cape Cod League or the Northwoods League. And Jimenez, he played in the Northwoods League, and in that league, he hit just .206. And again, you look at the slash line, got on base at .315, but only slugged at .308. And he actually did have a sizable amount of at-bats, 128 plate appearances over 33 games. So it appears as if this signing of Joe Jimenez is not necessarily a vote of confidence in him, but rather, okay, we're going to bring in Jimenez because Nick Garcia, he just recently transitioned into the pitching role. He was a position player at Chapman and just recently became a pitcher. So you figure you bring in a guy like Jimenez who can help him along and see where that goes. In 2019, Neil Huntington, he drafted a fair amount of catchers, and really none of them showed much signs of hope in the 2019 minor league year. And Jimenez obviously is not going to become some great catching prospect, and I could be wrong, but from the outset, it doesn't appear as if he's going to be a top-tier prospect. And the Pirates don't have a catcher in their top 30. Their top catching prospect right now is Deion Stafford. He's still a ways away. And outside of that, you got guys like Christian Kelly, Arden Pabst, and Jason Delay, and they don't inspire much confidence in the post-Jacob Stallings era. But the one thing that I do take solace in when it comes to the Pirates' catching situation, because outside of Jacob Stallings, it might look bleak. They do have Luke Magley behind him, who I am excited to see. I don't expect much from him, but defensively he is supposed to be very good, and that's sort of what you look for in a backup catcher. So it doesn't appear as if Luke Magley is going to be the long-term answer at the catching position. Behind him you have John Ryan Murphy, who has good pop in his bat, but he doesn't speak long-term catcher to me. And then you have Andrew Susac, who's more of a depth catcher, sort of like Stephen Barron last season. So you have those catchers. But what you want to see out of Ben Cherington at some point is acquiring somehow a young catcher. Forever the Pirates had guys like Tony Sanchez in the system or Elias Diaz. But really after Diaz came up, there hasn't been a catcher, and it was expected that Diaz was going to take over the role as the catcher of the future. And last year he obviously proved that he was not able to fit that bill. Diaz just wasn't able to do that. So the question for Ben Cherington now becomes, is where do you find that catcher? In the Starling Marte trade, I was hoping and praying that was going to be where Ben Cherington got his catcher. Then I figured, okay, maybe in the draft, he's going to have 6 picks. Maybe he'll draft a catcher. It didn't happen, and I wasn't upset at all because of the talent, and it appeared as if the Pirates just went off of the top guy on their board in the 2020 draft. But at some point here in the near future, and it might come at the trade deadline August 31st, depending on where the Pirates stand in contention. They could either trade for a young catcher as a contending move, as an upgrade from Jacob Stallings, or they could sell and get a catching prospect, say, in a Keone Keller trade or an Adam Frazier trade. So there's a lot of routes that Ben Cherington can go, and obviously this is going to be a bit of a crapshoot of a season in terms of results and what can happen in a 60-game season. But I'm excited for it, and I think you should be too. And what we do know is that at some point in the near future, Cherington is going to be acquiring sort of what we define as the catcher of the future. And I'm excited to see who that catcher is going to be. The Pittsburgh Pirates have always had great bullpens throughout their recent history. In the next year or so, they could have yet another fantastic pen. The Pittsburgh Pirates have a long history of having a good bullpen, especially in terms of late-inning pitchers. They haven't had a truly bad closer since before 2011 when Joel Hanrahan, and also haven't had any real bad setup men either since then. The team looks like they'll continue that trend in the future as they have set themselves up for long-term success in the bullpen. For one, they have two very interesting prospects in Blake Cederlind and Nick Mears. Of the two, Mears currently ranks higher than Cederlind, being the team's 13th best prospect per Fangraphs. Originally an undrafted free agent signing, Mears showed off what he can do last season. Through 46 and 2/3 innings across three different levels of baseball, Mears posted an excellent 3.28 ERA, 2.95 FIP, and 1.05 WHIP. The right-hander also struck out 35.9% of all the batters he faced. This is largely in part due to his blazing fastball he can get into the triple digits and a plus curveball. Eventually, Mears should be seen as a potential closer. But just because Mears ranks higher than Cederlind doesn't mean the latter isn't a talented arm. Cederlind spent most of his time at Double-A last season and pitched a total of 59 1/3 innings at three different levels. All told, he had a 2.43 ERA, 3.31 FIP, and 1.18 WHIP. Cederlind didn't post great strikeout numbers with a 21.9% strikeout rate, but he did combat that with a solid 6% walk rate and strong 0.3 home runs per 9 rate. Cederlind also had a sub-2 ERA and mid-3 FIP at high A. Cederlind and Mears might be two young prospects with a high ceiling, but they aren't the only young arms the Pirates will be relying on in the future. One that really stands out should be 2019 prospect Jeff Hartlieb. Now, yes, Hartlieb did struggle in the majors in 2019, but he has plenty of potential. He did very well before being called to the majors last season. Through 39 2/3 innings at AAA, Hartlieb had a 2.50 ERA, 2.24 FIP, and 1.16 WHIP. Not only did he strike out over 30% of the batters he faced, having a 30.7% strikeout rate, but he also allowed no home runs. This is a very impressive feat considering how hitter-friendly the minor leagues were last year. Hartlieb throws a fastball, sinker, slider, and changeup. Of the three, his sinker is probably the best. Not only can he throw it in the 95 to 96 mile per hour range, but he has some really nice movement on it as well. He also has plenty of movement on his slider, and his changeup is one of the most truly underrated pitches in baseball. Overall, as the 30th most vertical movement in baseball, while still sitting above average in horizontal movement. He's also one of 7 pitchers in baseball who could get their changeups up in the 90-plus mile per hour range. It has more movement than Jacob deGrom's change, and he can throw it harder than Garrett Cole. His fastball also shouldn't be slept on either. It has potential to be his best pitch. Hartlieb can throw the pitch upwards of 97 miles per hour with a spin rate in the top 88th percentile. Clay Holmes is another name that should be considered a future asset to the Pittsburgh Pirates. Like Hartlieb, Holmes did struggle given full playing time last season, but many of his struggles can be traced back to one thing: his fastball. Opponents slugged over 500, had a batting average above 300, walked more than 35% of the time, and swung and missed it at less than 20% of the time. Plus, it has very little spin, sitting in the bottom 7th percentile of fastball spin rate. Not only can he throw his sinker harder, but he can throw with more movement too. The right-hander also has a slider, curveball, and the occasional changeup. He can throw the 3 other pitches with plus movement as well. Despite his struggles last year in the majors, he still had a 60.3% ground ball rate to go with a 23.3% strikeout rate, showing he is more than capable of being a productive